Hello, and welcome to Rampant Pyanodon Season 3, the base tour. So this is my base tour episode. I have a lot on the agenda, and I'll try to get it as quickly as I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible while still explaining everything. First things first, this is a Rampant Pyanodon playthrough. What is Rampant and what is Pyanodon? Pyanodon is a mod pack which greatly overhauls the logistics of the entire game. As you can see here, like Automation Science Pack in the base game usually takes about 2 seconds, but it took me an hour and 20 minutes to make my first one, and it actually took me like 30 hours to completely finish automating it. Simple circuit boards, also something that's pretty instant, took me 77 hours, and now Pi Science 1, I'm coming in at 184 hours. Rampant is a mod that adds all types of biters, like laser biters and fast biters, and there are no biters banging on my walls right now. But it adds a ton of biters and different weapons, such as shotgun turrets and like electricity turrets and all sorts of different combat mechanics. My main reason for having Rampant in the mod pack is to make space a resource. I always liked that space. I always thought it was weird that we had infinite amounts of space. I don't want this to be entirely biter combat focused, but I did want, again, to make space a resource. Also, combat is more fun. Going along with that, I have the Clockwork mod, which, as you can see, it's getting darker over here as it turns to night, but Clockwork mod makes it so that the night is pitch black. This is to make lights a necessity rather than a luxury. What do we got next here? The general ship, the general map and shape and area. Okay. So if you take a look at my map, I chose a very islandy world, and again, this is because I wanted some natural choke points to fight the biters at. I also thought it would look really cool. It kind of constricts my space some more, so I have to build some funky looking factories. And also, I wanted to use a cargo ships mod, and this would probably, this would heavily promote it, as there are a lot of waterways that I can incorporate them into. As you can see, I have a few main islands that I'm in. This is my main continent where I crash landed. Up here is the Fish Island. Over here is the Essos continent. As you can see, we have fully explored the bottom half and we are good. Up here on this side is Bridgeland because we took a giant bridge to get there, and this is just the northern part of the Essos continent. So yeah, this is what my full map looks like right now. Okay, next up, military. Okay, let's go over what my military looks like right now. Again, I have a bunch of gates here. So this is Fish Gate. Again, pretty heavily fortified. I'm making good use of the cliffs here. And I tried to, this is like an experiment where I have a long runway to see if the biters will run down here and get shot at the same time. We go up here, Esso's Northern Gate North. I have some turrets on the far side here so that we can, again, shoot them as they're running in. Then we have the Essos Northern Gate East. Lots of use of the water here. As you can see, very few walls. Like, look at this choke point, look at this choke point. A lot of choke points and also just a ton of turrets stacked on top of it. And this brings us to the Bridgeland North Gate. Again, making use of the cliffs. There is this big area, but everything else is pretty heavily guarded. And again, you might be wondering, oh, like, why are there so many turrets here? Is this overkill? It's not overkill. Because earlier in this Season 3, I actually managed to lose. I used to have a gate here, and I had the Essos Northern Gate North as well, and they were they were way less fortified, and the biters managed to eat through this entire wall, and they were breaking through this wall at the same time, and they were going to come in and start eating at my base, so I had to call it quits, unfortunately, and let the biters win for there. I had to delete all the biters, turn it on peaceful while I rebuilt. But I've rebuilt and I've made everything super beefy. Last thing to go over for military is that I have these two military production facilities with a ton of buffers. So here's one of them and here's the other. So we should be able to make enough shotgun turrets and magazines to outlast any siege. And up next, let's talk about resources. I don't actually know what I meant when I said this, but there are, I guess, just a bunch of resources around. Quartz is on the Fish Island. We had to reach out for rock coal over right here in Bridgeland. The main reason we went to Bridgeland itself is to get the titanium ore, and then tin ore is all the way up here, and then we have more rock coal. Power. Let us go over the power situation. It's kind of funny because my power situation is different than when I finished the season like 40 minutes ago. This is because we have turned on the Pi Science 1 and Pi Science and Automation Science, and we have just started filling up their chests, but that means my entire base has turned on and we are using much more power than we were right before. But anyways, so I have two sources of power. One of them are all the fish turbines on Fish Island, and there are some turbines scattered around here, and some of my other builds. And the other main source of power is here. And yeah, it's just these five arrays of burners. And while we are on the topic of power, I did want to go over one of my systems. I have an excess burnable Sushi Belt system that I've employed on my base. So what is that exactly? Basically anything that takes burnable, notably like burner miners, or I guess, furnaces or burner miners, they use a variable burner line. So basically all the excess burnables in the game, so I have like wood, kerosene comes from stone, coal dust, coal and coke, sometimes I overproduce, and I don't want them clogging my lines, they go into the excess burnable sushi lane, and that goes around the base and it feeds into everything that needs to burn something. Very recently, it used to be extremely just full of wood, but I have turned on simple circuit board production, and now all my wood is getting consumed by that, and I've actually gone back to using raw coal. But if we look at some systems that are backed up, like this one, you could see a mix of wood and kerosene. Let's see somewhere else. Yeah, here, you see lots of wood and coke and kerosene and coal dust. And it's actually one of my favorite systems here. Just a sushi belt for different types. Every time we need to use one or the other, there is a prioritization mechanism. For example here, which means you will use the excess burnables first, and then if you don't have enough of those, then we use the raw coal. And to go with the excess burnable line, we also have an excess ores line. This is basically because we used to do ash, like recycling on site for a lot of our different buildings. But as you can see, I've removed a lot of them and just put fish turbines because I wanted to do ash in bulk. But basically, I used to recycle ash, and then I used to get like, aluminum ore and copper ore and all sorts of ores back on the lines. Like right here, you see these are coming up, and they're going in here and they're mixing up with ash and all the other ores, and it's kind of heavily dominated by ash right now and completely clogged, which I do need to fix. Again, this wasn't broken like this at the start of the season, I mean at the end of the season, but because I have turned everything on, my base is functioning in a way that it hasn't functioned in before, and it's kind of getting super clogged. But yes, as you can see here, yeah, I just have excess ores coming over to the smelteries. But that is my excess ores line, and yeah, right here, more excess ores. You can see them going up, and just kind of getting stuck because we are still dealing with a ton of ash. All right, so next up, we can finally talk about the base. So, I have already gone over these in the past, but Season 1 was Automation Science Pack. That was mainly this area right over here. As you can see, Automation Science Pack is made here, and it just basically uses the stuff here. But let's just move on. After that, we are going to talk about simple circuit boards. This was Season 2. Simple circuit boards was everything over here, and I started making things more modular, and I just have a ton of bigger buildings here as well. Like this is the fiber boards, I believe, and basic circuit substrate, and everything kind of feeds into this monstrosity of a bus, and it goes to the simple circuit board machine. And then finally, this is the season we're on now, Pi Science 1. So Pi Science 1 is a lot of stuff on this island, and it's got my biggest builds by far. I mean, this one is to make, if we can go back to the research center, it takes basic substrate and glassware. Glassware is here, but the rubber stopper to make them is this giant facility. I mean, it's pretty massive, and it was a really fun build. This one was a basic circuit substrate, and it was even bigger. For the rubber stoppers, we needed to make rocks, and that butchering and reproductive complex is over here, and this is the biggest thing I've ever built in the history of all my Factorio builds. But you can see all the rock complexes are here, and they're not running because we are full on rocks. I just forgot to mention automation science. This produces at a rate of 2 science per second. Simple circuit boards is, I believe, at I think one simple circuit board per second, and now we have Pi Science 1 is producing at a rate of half a Pi Science 1 per second. Again, things are looking kind of wonky right now just because I turned everything on and there's a lot of problems to fix now. But other than that, that was Pi Science 1. I can go over some various systems that I have in my base. The first one being flow control. So, flow control. I have a whole episode, I have a couple episodes where I talk about it, but essentially I've attached a lot of my fluids in the base to each other so that we use excess outputs before we use normal products. So for example, let's say moondrops here, right? So we have a lot of valves, which basically mean we will be using carbon dioxide from our carbon dioxide system before this system uses its own carbon dioxide. Again, it's just to prioritize, make sure we use excess fuel, liquid fuels, before primary liquid fuels. And then that's why we have another system here with 2 overflow valves to make sure we dump out the excess so it doesn't clog any machines up. And I have like this double buffer system where the oil can flow back into the system, but once it gets vented, it's vented. To go with flow control, we have a sister system. It's called fuel control, and that is right over here. So basically, we have some fuels, and we have our primary fuels and our secondary fuels. Our primary fuels are made over here from shale oil. I believe it's condensates, kerosene, and heavy oil. One of those, I think those 3 actually we could see. Yep, condensates, kerosene, and gasoline actually. So those are our 3, and those are the primary fuel sources. But we actually also have a ton of liquids. Remember how we said we were draining excess liquids? Well, how about instead of draining it, we actually burn those first? So I mean, every single fuel that has a fuel value goes into my fuel system, and it goes into these barrelers, and we prioritize the fuel from excess fuels before we use fuel from primary fuels. Kind of the same way we do it with our excess burnables line, the solid excess burnable lines and raw coal. We use the excess first before we use the primary. And then this goes out to my base, and it goes to this barreler, which feeds it into all my glassware. So we have basically every single type of fluid. As you can see, it's switching every second based on what's feeding into it to just kind of fuel all these machines. And then all the barrels go back. And again, we always prioritize the excess before the primary. And that is my fuel control system, and it expands around the base. So here it is for my smeltery as well. After that, we have the last system in my base, the most recent one, and one that I was very excited to have is my Caravan Logistics system. So let me see if I can find my guy. Here is a caravan, and he works like a train station. Let me go and run up to him. Okay, so not a train system. He's kind of like a train where he has stations, right? So the first station is he goes to this caravan outpost where I'm doing the rubber stoppers, because that's where he picks up his brains. That's what he eats. He eats brains, and every 2 actions, each brain is worth 2 actions. Okay, and then his first stop is he comes to me, the character, which we can see right here, and he picks up all this junk from my inventory that I never want in my inventory. He then goes to various outposts I've separated along the base, and drops off the materials so that they can be put back into the system. It's kind of like a preliminary it's like a train, but also mainly it's a logistics system. So I can actually call him over to me and see if if I've got stuff in my inventory for him to pick up. Oh, and there he is approaching from the left. I'll meet him halfway, but he comes up to me and then he starts going through every single item. And I think, oh, I don't think I have anything in here. that he wants to pick up. You know what? I'll throw him something. I'll give him magazines and shotgun ammo. But there we go. I end up often having a lot of those, and now he's going to go off and distribute those throughout the base. And if I had other items, he would have distributed those. And that is it for the base tour portion. If you have any questions or I missed anything, please let me know, because now we are moving on to the time-lapse map portion of this base tour. Okay, and now we're in the time-lapse map portion of our base tour. And as you can see, this is actually the time-lapse of my entire base from start to finish. So from 0 hours all the way to 186 hours with about one snapshot every single hour. And here is where we are current day. Let me run a couple more, one on the main continent because this is an interesting one to watch. Perfect. And then one on the season 3 continent. So most of the stuff we did was here. So we can watch this evolve over time as well. So here we go. And there we go. Yeah, that was mainly season 3, but otherwise, we could give this base tour through time. We can just go ahead and basically, I guess this would just be like a season in review almost. But we could start here right when we got simple circuit boards. The first thing I did was, get splitters and set up radars and stuff. The first big change you can see is that I start to set up flow control, which used to be this tiny thing right over here, setting up flow control, and that was a whole episode. And then I went right from here going to the bridge. So I start making a bridge, and I think it appears like right over here. Perfect. You can see I start building this bridge to this new territory. I capture the titanium, then I start building a wall here, and I build a wall down here, and I start getting and I get on to building wood. And this is around the time where I have trouble with biters. I think we can go to the moment that we lost. I mean, as you can see here, I mean, it was just war. It was just endless waves of biters. Yeah, here we go. Just endless biters on all these fronts. Even down here, just endless. And we can go to the point where where the biters win. So if we scroll slowly, yeah, right here. This is the moment the biters won. You can see this massive graveyard of biters, and they chewed through my entire wall here. The north gate was actually doing fine at this moment. South gate was doing fine. Um, the north gate was not doing fine. They broke through here as well. Right here is where the biters defeated me, or the biters won. They broke through both these walls, and it was super sad because I had to turn them off at this point. At this point, my base was having power issues. I wasn't producing magazines and shotgun turrets enough. I wasn't even producing like iron or steel. I think the ash was backed up as well. It was just like, it was a mess. My base was collapsing under its own weight, and the pollution and the biters was not helping at all. But after this, I rebuilt my walls. We can watch as I transform these, right? So the wall is rebuilt. I get new power. As you can see, Fish Turbine Island is made. And then I do develop more wood in places. So we can see wood production pop up. Yep, there's wood production here and over here as well. So we can see wood production start to appear. And then after that is when I began working on my walls. So I made this one over here, Fish Gate. Again, it used to look like this. And then now it looks like this. And it's just a much more massively packed wall. We can see all the other military fronts as well. This was Northern Gate North. As you can see, here's what it looked like before the attack. And then during the attack, and then afterwards, bam, just absolutely beefed up. Esso's Northern Gate East again, pretty inefficient wall here again, just alternating shotgun and normal turrets up and down. I decided to actually use the terrain and spend time with it, and bam, I mean, it's super solid. We already saw these, but same with the Bridgeland North Gate, used to be just a straight line. Bam, I used the cliffs. And then as you can see here, our southern gates actually just straight up disappear because we went and discovered this whole island and there are no more biters there. So we can see, yeah, the gates just disappear. And that was the massive turret walls. Afterwards, I went to work on the glassworks, and I built my first glassworks over here, so it should appear like this. Yep, my first iteration of the glassworks, and I also built this fishing dock for my patron Sterling, and it just kind of blooms and appears, which is cool. The next big thing I worked on was rubber stoppers, which is right here. This massive build, I love it. It's just so big. But I did rubber stoppers, then I did basic substrate, which was right next to it. And then the next thing I did was fuel control and barrelers, which I think will appear right over here. And I started adding barrels to my system, and I implemented it here in my Glassworks. Glassworks does change a couple more times after this, but after this, very, very long time to bioengineer Vrox. So as you can see here, that was just me starting to clear out the area. And then starting to slowly build all this. I mean, it's just massive. It was a massive undertaking. And even then, look, it's not built, not built, not built, and finally built. We did the Vrock farms, and then we re-put down the temporary setups here so that I could work on my Vrock logistics system, and eventually this turbine turns into an outpost where the caravan goes to eat brains so that he can power my caravan logistics system. And then from there, it was just like moving the labs over here. So like this lab, it goes bye-bye, disappears, and it reappears over here. So we have this massive research lab that appeared out of nowhere. And we finally connected up the basic substrate with the glassware and the rocks, and we put it right here. And then all this feeds up and into my pie and into the research labs. And that's basically my time lapse, my base tour through time. The only thing I want to do now is just kind of, I just want to show off this spaghetti intersection because from start to finish, as you can see, it used to be nice and beautiful and small. It got pretty big pretty rapidly, but I thought this was pretty much the peak of how it was going to look. But over time, other than drowning in trees at some point, we just kept adding more to it. And now we're at this monstrosity. And I just want to take a second to appreciate this massive, gigantic belt with just a ton of inputs and outputs. It's just streaming in and out of it, joining up, flying. Let me look at this. This is insanity. I love it so much. It's like crossing over itself. This is the thickest part. It's crazy, and it goes up here and to the right, and it pretty much just dies there. We have, I guess the bus goes into several different directions, several subbelts as well. And then the last thing I want to do is show off my sushi system. As I promised, it used to take a bunch of different kinds of power. So at the beginning, it was mainly like coal dust and wood. We see kerosene and wood, and at some point it was basically all wood. I think you saw it for a brief second, but yeah, it was just a ton of wood at some point. Where is it? Look at this, all wood basically, which is super cool. And also the excess ores line, I want to show that off too because I feel like it didn't get a good showing. Okay, here's a much better showing of it. Yeah, you can see different ores and coal dust and a bunch of other stuff on it. We can scroll through, yeah, you can see a bunch of different ores and mainly actually no ash at all, basically, because I used to do all the ash on site, but then at some point it just turns into all ash, which is super sad. But yeah, this is my base tour. Again, my last episode was like over an hour long, and I'm trying to make this one a little more concise so that people can go from base tour to catch up to the current season if they so wish. So I don't think I missed anything. That is the end of the season. Again, I want to give a special shout out to my patrons, if I can find them here. Ima, thank you, Ima. And Sterling, your island is up here. Thank you, Sterling. John Boy, thank you very much. And then Maestuzo and Irrespetusto. So, thank you guys for watching this base tour across time. And thank you for watching Season 3. I'll see you guys in Season 4.